This is Dave with Clearwater Outfitters, and today we're going to tie the electric dread. So this fly is a rather unique fly in the world of saltwater fishing. I first learned about it back in 2017 or so. The original designer is Cordell Baum, aka the Bonefish Whisperer. Unfortunately, Cordell passed away a few years ago. And this fly pattern, I have had a lot of success with bonefish in the Bahamas and in Biscayne Bay, which is where he developed the fly to primarily be fished. So in a way, we're keeping Cordell's spirit alive with this pattern. He's a very unique, larger-than-life guy, and really this pattern kind of exemplifies that as well. All that aside, it works really well. A lot of people will look at this and probably just discount it at face value, but you really should give this fly a shot. It's a lot of fun to tie, and it's a lot of fun to fish because honestly, I can see this fly really well in that clear water, and it gets sandy. A lot of those sand-colored flies are difficult to see, but not this fly. So to tie this fly, we're going to need the following materials: an Ahrex SA250 shrimp hook, size 8. Other hooks can be used, but I've found that to be quite useful. I like to use a whiting streamer pack in orange. You could do this fly in some other colors like pink, but this orange and black is really the iconic version. One of the most notable materials is this stuff called Edge Bright. When you cut it, just like the name says, the edge is bright. We have this here in the shop, and a small package like this is pretty inexpensive. It'll last you a long time. Some bright orange calf tail, crystal flash and pearl, some small monofilament or fluorocarbon. This is some 20-pound that I had kicking around in my sling pack from fishing. The eyes I actually make myself. You could buy your own, but I get these little check beads. They're an 8/0 size, and I glue them onto some 30-pound monofilament. If that's something you're interested in, hey, let us know in the comments, and we'll put together a little short about how we make these eyes. And then for today, we're going to tie this with an extra small double pupil hot orange lead eye, but you can obviously do this with bead chain as well, depending on the depth of water that you want to fish this. If you look down in the description below, we'll have links to all these materials to make it easier on yourself. All right, so let's get started. This fly pattern is definitely not a beginner fly pattern. But at the same time, a lot of the tips and the techniques that we're going to be using to tie this, they're not necessarily advanced. So as you build up some other kind of intermediate patterns, you'll be getting yourself more than prepared to tie this. It's just we're going to do a number of techniques that we don't always do on some of the more simpler saltwater fly patterns. So we're going to start off with our shrimp hook here in the vise. Cordell used to use like the Gamakatsu B10S stinger hooks. Those are great hooks. This Ahrex is a little bit stronger wire, and I love this for anything shrimpy. These Ahrex hooks are awesome. So we're just get a little bit of a thread base in. I'm going to start off by putting in our lead eyes. Just like you always do, put in a series of X wraps. And we'll do some lockdown wraps as well. If you want to put in some super glue, you certainly can. As it gotten a little bit cattywampus to the side there, I want to make sure it's nice and straight. All right, we're good. And so now we're going to advance this thread down the hook. I'm actually going to raise my hook up here just a little bit. We're going to, again, continue advancing our thread quite a ways down. You can see I'm almost halfway through the bend of this hook. I'm going to grab a black Sharpie marker, and about the first inch or so, I'm just going to darken my thread. Effectively, I just want this to be black thread instead of orange. I'll give that a moment to dry a little bit. And now I'm going to candy stripe this as I come back up the hook. And so the idea is to have just this decorative kind of barber pole or candy stripe, whatever you want to call it, section on the hook. It's not real prolific when you're done with the fly, but if you look at an electric dread, you'll definitely see that as part of the tie. All right, so we're all set there. Next is we're going to tie in a little bit of edge bright. This piece, Cordell used to call this the trident truth, but this little trident spike shape, it's 3/16 of an inch wide, and I just trim a taper end to it. And then I also taper the back side as well, similar to like when you're doing a gurgler and you pinch off some of that material, get rid of it so that you can tie it in a little easier. So I'm just going to tie this on to the hook, some real loose wraps, and you can see this little trident is going to stick out. The idea is to make this as straight as possible. The edge bright will want to roll and twist, and you're just going to kind of have to manhandle it and start off with loose pressure on your thread, and then as you get happier with where you've got it positioned, then you can crank it in a little tighter. So that is pretty straight, and it's just starting down the bend of the hook, so that when I set the hook point up, which is how it'll be in the water, that trident will be standing a little bit upward. Next, I'm going to get this calf tail. I'm going to grab a pinch of it. Like a lot of flies, it can be easy to go too heavy on your material, so I always tend to cut off my little clump, and I end up with, honestly, a bit too much, and then I end up with wasting a little bit of it. But to get the proportions correct, you just have to do that sometimes. And so I heard this on another tie-in video once, that when you roll material in between your fingers like this to try to get all the fibers to mash in and kind of act and behave as one, is twizzling the material. I like that, so I'm going to keep using it. So I've twizzled that a little bit, and I just want this calf tail to stick a little bit beyond the trident of truth, as Cordell would say. So it's his pattern, so we'll use his terms. Now I do tie it slightly different than he did, and there are some tutorials out there, at least step-by-step guides. I'm not aware of any of his, of Cordell ever doing a video. He used to use some other filler material. What I actually do in my version is I'm just going to use some of this existing material to build up a little bit of bulk in the fly, and one of the ways I do it is with this calf tail. I'm going to intentionally clip it way back there so that I start to build up a little bit of bulk. I don't need to go crazy, but I need a little bit of bulk back there. Next will be some crystal flash. The way that I've consistently gotten the same amount, and it's up to you, but I grab one piece, and I just cut it down the middle. So I've got two that are roughly the equal, same length. Do it again, and then I do it one last time. And there's a little bit of curve in my material here, which I'm not super excited about, so I'm going to cut that out. Got quite a bit extra in there. There we go. That's much better. And just barely at the end of the calf tail there. We'll tie that in just a couple wraps. And we'll leave a little bit of that crystal flash in there for some bulk as well. Next are going to be the eyes. Again, you can buy some eyes. The eyes are really a prominent part of this pattern. And you can see there's got that little bead that's super glued onto some 30-pound mono. And then I seal it with a little epoxy at the end. And Cordell always liked to have the stems darkened up with this with a black Sharpie as well. So when I place these eyes, I like the eyeball, if you will, to be right at the forward part of the bend in the hook. So if you have it too far back here, the eyes aren't really prominent. If you have it too far out, it sticks out a little too far. It looks a little awkward, but right about there seems to be pretty consistently where I want them to be. So I'll just get a couple loose wraps in there. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Again, I want the wraps to be pretty loose where these eyes are just kind of hanging on there, because that allows me to get up over them and get them really set equidistant to where I want them to be, and that's going to work out pretty well. So I can crank these down in, leave those monofilament stems there, so I can, again, I'm building a little bit of bulk as time goes by with all these different materials. And now I can kind of bend my eyes into position. We'll do a final adjustment at the very, very end to just get them set where we want. And you may even do that as you take this out of your fly box to use it. You want the eyes to be pointed upward just above that trident of truth. Okay, so that's kind of the first half of the fly, if you will. Next, our next set of materials are going to be that little bit of small monofilament or fluoro, whatever you've got. Like I said, this is 20 pound. If you had 10 or 8 or 6, that would be fine. Cordell actually used to cut a really thin strip of the edge bright and use it, but I've just been using the monofilament. I think it keeps to the spirit of what he was doing with the fly, and it's a little bit easier to work with. So I'm just going to tie that in, and essentially I'm going to forget about that for now. Here's our second piece of edge bright. This is the 3/16 wide strip. I usually cut this, just kind of this part, and I get 2 flies per strip. And we're just going to tie this right down here. Again, a couple loose wraps. The edge bright is kind of grippy, a little bit of a pain in the neck. But once you get it where you want it, you can really crank on it, and it is not going anywhere. All right, so that's also in place. Now we had that streamer pack that I showed you in the very beginning. You're going to want to pick out really at least 2. It depends how buggy you want to make this pattern. I like it relatively buggy. You could use just 1, but I like to get 2 real nice long ones, feathers that are set, and we're going to palmer these backwards towards the to the lead eyes. But before we do that, we really want to prep these a little bit so that as we palmer these, we really get the maximum effect. And so it's actually strangely satisfying. I'm going to pitch the tip here, and I'm just going to run my fingers down this, and you'll see how we're going to straighten all of those individual fibers out. Makes it quite a bit wider. I'll try to do a little bit of a before and after for you. You can really see the difference there. We'll do the same thing here. All right, so we got both those feathers are prepped. You can start at either end. I like to work with the little bit thicker end first. We just need to make sure that we got enough to get all the way forward. So I'm going to just peel some of this off. These stems tied in. And this particular tie hasn't gotten a lot of bulk here. Quite oftentimes in through here, the fly will get really thick and it's really thin back here. And this one's been building up pretty parallel. It's easy to make this thing too wide, and it ends up not looking very shrimpy. So we do want some bulk in here. I'm using 210 denier thread. So I'm going to build up just a little bit of bulk because, like I said, this one happens to be thin. All right. So we got our feathers are all set, and we're just going to palmer this forward, and you've got all this feather to work with. Again, if you want it really buggy, you can keep those palmering very close to one another. I probably am going to go for something relatively, I don't know, medium. They're 1/16 of an inch or so apart. So I got a lot of feather to work with here. And that one's working out real well. So now I'm just going to tie this in. Again, each of these techniques in and of themselves isn't real difficult, but again, may or may not be some stuff in through here that you haven't done before. So again, each and of themselves not difficult, but you put a bunch of them together, it can make the tie frustrating. But things are going well here. All right, so palmering's done. I'm going to take this out of the hook, or the hook out of the vise, just because I want to show you something. Before I grab this edge bright and crank down over the top, I'm going to stroke all these fibers down into the side because I really want to get as much as I can as far as a buggy profile out of this pattern. And that, you got all that goodness that you just worked so hard to get it splayed out so nice. We don't want to just mash it down. So I'm going to pull this to the side. And it's interesting, this fly doesn't look exactly like a shrimp. It doesn't look exactly like a crab. But it looks like a lot of different creepy crawlies that are out there on the flats. And so by doing that, it can kind of look like a lot of different things. We've been talking about this being a great bonefish pattern, but really it's also taken some nice permit as well. All right, so I'm pulling this edge bright tight, and it's almost got a little bit of an elastic property. So don't go crazy, but don't be afraid to pull on it a little bit. I'm just going to put 2 wraps. I'm going to pull that down tight. A few more securing wraps. Now we could trim this excess edge bright real tight up in here. And if you want to, go for it. But Cordell used to keep a little tab right there. And so if it was good enough for the guy that invented it, it's good enough for me. And I'm just going to kind of look everything over. I can see my eyes are kind of in the wrong place right now, but I'm going to leave those alone for now. And we're going to come back to this monofilament that we had. You probably want a bodkin for this part. Before we just go cranking, we're going to, wrapping this all the way around forward and tying it in. And really the intent of that is to hold this edge bright down. But we also don't want to, again, our great hackle job that we did here, we don't want to mat it all down. So as we come up and forward, we're going to wiggle it back and forth, maybe even kind of use our bodkin to kind of be a little bit of a pathfinder, or I don't know, whatever you want to call that. But the idea is we want to get that edge bright held down in place. And we're going to just kind of keep working this, almost like when you see people working thread through when they're spinning deer hair. And that's working out. I'm actually having a pretty good run with that without having to reach down, and I dropped it, of course. So we're back to the beginning. So that's going to happen sometimes. That's what I get for saying how it was going so well. But we'll get there. All right. So I've got it all the way forward. I like to bring it up to the tie point on top of the on top of the eyes here, which is actually the bottom of the fly, because it's going to hide it a little more. And we'll tie it in. Got that nice and snug. It's not going anywhere. We definitely want to trim this up nice and snug so it's out of the way, so we can tie our fly on. And the only thing remaining now is a weed guard. We absolutely want a weed guard on this this fly. What I've been using as my weed guard here is I just got some, we could use that 20-pound, but I've got some old monofilament I could use. Actually, here you go. This is what I meant to reach for. We got this here in the shop as well. This is just some Mason hard mono, and this is 20-pound test. Cordell used to also have this sharpied up all nice and black as well. I tend to just do it at the end so that I don't have to get all that permanent marker all over my fingers. So the way I'm going to do this weed guard is I'm just going to pinch it in the middle, kind of EP style here. If you've ever seen Enrico Puglisi talk about weed guards, I'm going to just do 3 or 4 loose wraps. Then I just pull it up tight. A couple more to secure. And then I'm going to start getting some behind it to just really prop those that hard mono up. And we're going to whip finish it. Almost lost my fly out of the vise. So the tie is done. Get our thread out of the way. And I can just hit that weed guard with a little bit of a Sharpie. I'll do that after I've trimmed off the excess hard mono. And again, just give it a little bit of colorization, because the orange and black is really the kind of signature look. Could be pink and black if you decide to do it in pink. And one last thing, Cordell used to always put 3 dots on the bottom. Those are the 3 dots of death. There's our 3 dots of death. That is a completed tie. And lastly, I'm just going to pull these eyes so that they're looking a little bit more skyward now. Coming up off that Trident of Truth. But that is the Electric Dread, a radical looking bonefish pattern. A lot of people look at it and just immediately discount it, but give it a shot. It's a pretty slick pattern, and it's a lot of fun to tie. So give it a shot. All right, so like we said, links to all the materials that were used in this pattern are in the description below. If you like this pattern, like this tie-in video, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to check out our other videos. And if there's something that you'd like to see us tie, let us know.